Good evening, Guy Solis again. Tonight I'm going to give you my version of how to peen a straight razor. I plan to not only share with you some of my logic, but I also plan to share with you some of the things I found, some of the things that I think would be useful to the novice, okay? And maybe someone else will learn through this. I don't know, probably so. Anyway, first the equipment. What you're going to need first of all is you're going to need a vise or something to hold your rod firmly as you work it, okay? And you're also going to need a nice surface, a hard metal surface like this, to work your razor also. Now this razor, this vise, it's a 5-inch vise, and it cost me only $25 at a pawn shop. You know, these things are usually like, you know, you go to Sears, they're like $95. So I seen that, I snatched it right up, right? And I'm going to get back to something about this, but next thing you're going to need is a round-headed hammer like this. This one here is a, I don't know, maybe it's a 3 or 4 ounce ball peen hammer. I've had it for 30 years. I don't remember how heavy it is. You're also going to need a file with a fine-toothed file like this. Remember, brass is kind of soft, and so you need something, you know, pretty fine to cut it. Next thing you're going to need is a flesh cutting type tool. Now this one here is a really cheapy thing. I don't know where I even got it from, and it's almost wore out. You can see it just beat to hell. I should throw it out, but anyway, but you want something that's going to cut flush, and you want something that you can see so you can know where to put this to cut it, because you need to cut like about a 1/16 of an inch, and if you get any closer than that, then you're going to start all over again. So that's what you need. The next thing you're going to need, well, so you don't really need this, but it's something that is really good to have if you plan to do any of this on a larger scale. This here is a 2-week pill divider, and every one of these slots here has, this one here has micro fasteners for when I do my mock-ups, more micros, and all these are different size washers, brass washers. And over here I got different things. This is a stainless steel rod, this is a brass rod, and this is used washers and stuff that I just keep in case of emergency. Now what I do is I get my brass rod and I just kind of pre-cut it into a predetermined length, and I just cut them and I just put them right inside here, so when I need one I can grab it, okay? Another thing I got that is of interest is this brass tubing. Now what's so interesting about this brass tubing is that the inside diameter of this brass tubing is 1/8 of an inch. So as you can see, the brass rod fits in there really nice. You know, it's not too tight, snug, but it fits in there just right. And what I do with this is I'll clamp it down in my vise, and I'll get my Dremel tool, the cutoff wheel, and I'll cut me off a little piece, and I'll sand it all up, and I'll make it smooth and all that, and I'll put it in a razor that has a large opening like this. Now this large opening, when you put your pin through there, it's just a real sloppy fit. So what I do, this one here isn't quite large enough for me to put that brass tubing in, so what I'll do is I'll go to my drill press and I'll make it large enough. And what I'll do is I'll epoxy that piece of tubing in there, and you got to make sure it's straight, so you use a piece of rod and you make sure it's straight. But if you're going to do something like that, you should also know that you need to get tape, masking tape, and tape all around the hole on both sides, okay? and tape over the hole in the bottom. You just push it, make sure it's really nice and tight and adheres well, and then you can put your glue in there, your epoxy, and then put in your rod, and then when you're done you peel the tape off and you're done. Right now, the first time I tried this, I thought that epoxy was going to come off this metal easy because I didn't have any masking tape on it, and I kind of got it around the hole, right? And man, I went through some changes getting that stuff off. So that's a good hint right there, or a good tip right there. You know, mask off your hole in your tang before you do anything. Now, one flaw about using a vise is that it's got metal jaws. Okay, metal jaws, when you clamp down on your rod, will scar up your rod to the point where you won't be able to put a washer on it. I came up with this idea. All this is a couple little thin pieces of redwood that I banded together, and all I do is you just get it like this, and you slide your piece of rod in there, see, just like that, and you open your jaws, you crank it down like that, and it won't slip, it won't scar up your rod. It's perfect. It's a great little thing that I kind of started doing. But you know, I would make one of like this if I were you guys, if I were going to get into pinning, because really you'll scar up your rod and you just won't be able to work with it. So I guess that's it. Oh, I want to show you this first. Now, when you are pinning a razor, or pinning a razor, and what you're doing is you're getting the rod, and what you're doing is you're tapping it. Let's say this is the rod here, and what you're doing is you're tapping on it, and what's happening is the rod is going to mushroom out, and what you're looking for is you're looking for a nice, perfectly round as possible mushroom that doesn't have any frayed looking edges to it. So you got to work it a little bit, but what you want is that mushroom to be the same size all the way around, so when you put your washer on there, it's going to stay where it is. I came up with this little drawing here, and what it shows is you're looking down at the tube, or at the rod, this way, like this, okay? And when you start to tap on it and it starts to mushroom out, this represents the mushroom, okay? And that's what you're looking for. So take your pin out and just look at it and rotate it and make sure you got what you need. You know, sometimes if my edge is a little bit rough, I'll get some 400 grit sandpaper, and I'll just kind of rub it around and look at it. But you want that to be pretty nice by the time you take it out, because you got to remember, this is your finished product here. So tell you what, I'm going to do one thing and I'm going to be right back. Hi, I'm back. What I do is I get the pin that I'm going to use, and I will mushroom out one side. Excuse me. But also, here's my washer. Also, I will get on my belt sander and I'll make one side a point so that I can slip on the washers and everything a lot easier. So what I'm doing here is I actually pin one side of the rod, and I put a washer on it, okay, whatever side I'm going to use, and then that makes things easier. Because a lot of times what I'll do is whenever I make scales, I'll get the scales and I'll glue them together, and then I'll slip in my pin here like this, and I'll bottom out on it, and then I clamp it, and then when I come back to it, the pin's already in it and it's all lined up. All I got to do is trim it and pin it, right? And so that's one tip. If you didn't understand what I meant. And by doing all that, just let me know and I'll be glad to explain it to you. Today I'm using this this old beat up razor I've been using as a guinea pig for about 6 months, and it sure is beat to hell. But I removed the pin on the wedge side, and the only difference between pinning the wedge side and pinning the blade side is the blade side will get a larger brass washer between the scale and the blade on each side. Everything else is the same. And so one thing about removing scales is that you want to make sure that you put your pins in right the first time, because if you work for a couple hours and you have a set of scales that you really like and you're doing a good job on them, then the last thing that you want to do is have to remove those scales because you bent a pin or something. Because once you remove those scales, you risk harming your blade. I mean, harming your scales. You know, because what I do, if it's just a shitty kind of set of scales, I'll just put it on my belt sander, and I'll just sand it right off with no care in the world. But if it's a good set of scales that I have to mess with, then you really risk damaging those things, because you got to either be really extremely careful on that bandsaw, because if you just one touch, you're going to ruin those scales, or get on the drill press and drill it out. Now the problem with the drill press is that these cheap plastic scales like the one on this Genco, if you use the drill press and that rod gets hot, it's going to melt those scales. So you got that problem. The same thing with any type of acrylic or kieranite, like this stuff here, will melt. So you got to be really careful. So the best way to do that is just drill a little bit and then dip it in water and go back and forth like that until you finally got it out. But the problem with drilling it out is that you have to kind of know what the hell you're doing, because either you have to get a punch. I got a punch around here. Here's a punch, and I put a razor sharp tip on this thing, so when I come over and I'm going to drill out a pin, I put this right in the center and I tap on it about 10 times with my ball peen hammer, and I create a little divot there that drill bit can sit in. But that doesn't always work. I mean, your drill bit could slip right off and just ruin your scales. So one tip about doing that is that don't let your drill bit hang way out like this, because it'll flex. It's only going to be a 1/16 of an inch. It'll flex. So shorten it up as much as you can, and just leave a little stub stick out, and it won't bend so easy. So anyway, so here we go. All right, so now you've already done a mock-up, and you already know which goes what, how up goes up, what goes down, what goes left, and all that stuff, right? So you did a dry fit, and you know how everything's going to go. So so what I'm doing here is I'm going to let me do this the easy way, huh? Normally I glue the wedge side, so usually what I'll do is I'll put my pin in like this, and then I'll put some epoxy down here, and then you could either hold it with one hand or put it against something like this, see, and then you get your wedge, or whatever you're going to, or whatever your razor or whatever. Well, actually, no. You put the epoxy down, you put the wedge in, you position it, you put the epoxy on the wedge, and then you come over here, and then you drop down your other side of your scale. And nice tight fit, that's for sure. Okay, so once you got it to that point, what you want to do is get you another washer and use all the same washers so it looks right. And I just wet my finger and just stick it on my finger like this, and I just kind of feed it onto that point like this, and push it all the way down. Now, here's a crucial part. You hold everything tight like this, see? And you have your washer all the way down. And you come back here with your cutting tool and you cut about a little over 1/16 of an inch like that. And don't let loose with your thumb. And remember, your washer is going to try to fly out of there. And you put it down on something hard like this. And you get your hammer, or you get your file, and you file it. And what you're doing is you're cutting off that ridge, because my tool leaves a ridge. So I kind of do that. Now, you don't want your rod too short, because you want it to have some character. So if you do it short, it's going to be flat, and you really don't know, if it's got too much gripping power. So you want to just tap on your razor like this, nice and easy. Remember, you want to tap easy because you do not want to bend that. If you were to bend the pin, okay, what I'm doing here is I tap on the center, and then this brass will just start spreading out. So what I do is I go around the outside, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get that edge to kind of knuckle under a little bit, see? Because if you can get it to do that, then you limit the chance of your rod having a catch on it. Because when you're all done, you're going to want to rub your fingers against it and make sure it's smooth. And you can actually accomplish that with your ball peen hammer. It's not, you just need a little bit of practice. So I kind of move the blade around like this, and I kind of just keep tapping. Now, something that is a big deal with me is I do scale replacement, and it's a big deal for me because sometimes I'll spend a lot of time making a set of scales that are just tits, and if I were to not do this right, I could scar up my scale. So what you want to do is when you put it down, you hear that noise? That's the pin. You want only that touching the surface. Nice and easy. Now if you're having problems with that, or you have a fear about that, get you a piece of rubber like this and just set your razor on. Then you can tap to high heaven and not worry about hurting anything. Now at this point, I'm interested in the aesthetics of this thing. Okay, you want to look at it, and you want to hammer it, and you want to make sure the edges are curled under as much as possible. You want to make sure there's no heavy hammer marks on it, and so you kind of keep going. Like that, and you turn it over and check the other side, and start rubbing with your fingers and see if there's any catches on it, okay? You guys out there are like me. I just like to build stuff. I like to make stuff. I like to create stuff. And I'll tell you something right now. You can build a beautiful set of scales and mount them, but if your pinning is crappy, it just kind of throws the whole thing off. So we go. That's looking good. Now, on my take one of this video, because this is a redo, I did the hinge side, and one thing that you need to watch out for is over tightening. When the more you tap on your pins on the hinge side, the more it's going to tighten the razor. See, this is pretty good. Look at that. See, it stays pretty good. And that is a big deal, because if you're holding your razor like this and it's loose, you can come down and slice your fingers, right? So pay attention to that. Now also, when you're doing the hinge side of your razor, be careful. Look at it and make sure it's going right down the center when you close it. See, that's what you want. You want it to go right down the center, and be real aware of what's going on there. Now, if you're finding out that your razor is going off to one side, check immediately to see if your scales are straight. Get you a straight edge like this and just check it. Check it out. Okay, if your scales are straight, then you have a bent pin, and that is a drag, because you could put a hole in your scales, like I was saying, with the drill press, and that's a drag. You just so have respect for your work, have respect for the razor, and remember, every day's a good day for a shave. You all take care, okay? If you have any questions, just write me up. Hello. So we peened the razor, and my first take of this video that I discarded, I pinned the hinge side of this razor, and I want to make sure you got full information concerning the hinge side of a razor. Okay, the first thing you need to make sure that you do is install proper brass washers between the scale and the metal. Okay, the second thing is, when you're peening your hinge side, is don't just pound to high heaven. Just tap a little bit, get it mushroomed out, and then start checking it for tightness, and then keep going until you got it to the right tightness. The right tightness is when you can get your razor like this, and you could bounce it and it won't do that. Okay, so this one obviously needs to be tightened some more. So and that's a safety issue, because you can easily cut yourself pretty good if your razor is not tight. The next thing that I want you to do is, I want you to get your razor and close it and watch the travel, and watch how it should go right between the two scales, just like that, right down the center. If it doesn't do that, then you may have a bent pin, and that's one reason that you take really good care when you're pinning this razor, is because you don't want to be put into that position where you have to take this thing apart after you put all that work into a nice new set of scales. Okay, so you might have a bent pin. Other than that, you can try tweaking it out, going back and forth like this. But your scales should be straight, because you should have already checked that before you put it on the razor. So if you have horn scales and they are warped, well, get a hold of me. I'll tell you how to fix that. That's not a problem. Because I know horn scales are some of the most beautiful scales you'll ever put on a razor, or even bone. But sometimes they warp, and I know exactly how to fix them. Anyway, that's that. So if you have any questions about this video concerning pinning, and don't hesitate to reach me. I'm here to share information with people. I think people should, if they want to, know how to do whatever they want with their razor, basically. Now, in my next, I want to tell you something first about. I was talking earlier about checking your razor and making sure you have a good razor, I actually have a video out, and I'm going to put a link to that on the bottom of this page, but I actually have a link out. It's a little bit lengthy, but I suggest you watch it if you don't know anything about straight razors, because there's a lot of conditions that a razor could have that you are definitely going to want to avoid. And one example is I bought this 7/8 double duck, and it's excellent. It's like it's used maybe once, but I had to weed through 100 razors to find this one and two other. One's a double duck, 5/8 double duck. The other one is a 6/8 Wade and Butcher. Those are the only 3 razors this guy had out of 100 razors. He could have benefited from that video easily. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, this guy collected all these razors, and you know, 95% of them or let's see, 97% of them were just useless. I mean, they were so bad, it's like, I'll just take one look at them and put them away. I mean, won't even consider buying a razor like that. So, anyway, in my next video, I'm going to do a video that I'm calling the most comprehensive honing video for beginners. And I'm taking notes, and I want to do a really good job on this because I want to share information with people who want to hone their own razors. I think if you want to hone your own razor, that you should be able to and have a comprehensive video. I know there's a lot of videos out there, and you can probably get most of the information that I would give you, but you have to search all over the place for it. Okay, and I want to give you, I want to give the viewer information that can't be found anyplace else, because I've seen everyone else's honing videos, and some guy will teach you how to put an edge, or not an edge, yeah, an edge on the, not an edge, a bevel on a razor, and the next guy will show you how to do this, and I look at it and I'm going, well, that's fine. You know, this one guy was honing a razor, and he's like, 8 strokes here, 8 strokes there, 8 strokes there, are you done? And I'm thinking, well, you know, that's not honing, that's touching up. Okay, so if you're interested in learning how to hone, I'm going to cover the equipment that you need. I'm going to cover some excellent technique. I'm going to tell you what to watch out for. I'm going to tell you how to hold your body as you're honing. All sorts of stuff. I'm going to give you as much information as I possibly can in as short a video as I can. So anyway, this is Guy Solis, late night here in Colorado. So y'all take care, man. This is remember, every day's a good day for a shave. Take care, man.